Hellblade is made by Ninja Theory, the developers of Heavenly Sword. I'm expecting their next game to be titled Purgatory Saber. In a bit of unfortunate timing, this game's logo resembles a fidget spinner. You can expect three things from a Ninja Theory game: extremely well-produced cutscenes, giant talking heads, and gameplay designed by people good at making cutscenes and giant talking heads.
Hello. Who are you?
Fourth wall breaking narration, and a fourth wall breaking protagonist. And now I'm strangely comparing this game to Deadpool in my mind, right down to the multiple conflicted voices in Senua's head and the seemingly imperviousness to dying.
Doesn't matter. I'll be right here. Nice and close so I can speak without alerting the others.
This game is an ASMR fanatic's wet dream. 5 minutes of boat rowing. Most developers create rational characters that do irrational and hypocritical things, but Ninja Theory have cleverly sidestepped that sin by making their character legitimately mentally ill. So in return, 5 cents for making my job harder, you smartasses.
The darkness, it just builds onto itself, growing stronger.
Darkness is a malignant primal evil cliché.
Oh, she heard us.
That is the exact face I would make if I heard someone narrating my life. This game is a bit on the short side, so to pad the length, the devs added lore stones that recite Norse mythology that has no connection to the plot. Taking Dillion's head across his bridge to Helheim is Senua's only objective, and would be over in 5 minutes if the game didn't constantly throw hallucinated roadblocks in Senua's path. So they're not even real roadblocks to begin with. No matter how blurry you make it or what filter you use, I can still tell full motion video from a 3-dimensional model. Plus, I've played Ninja Theory's previous game, Enslaved, and know that they like mixing full motion video with their game.
The runes seal the gates to hell. Find one like it to open the gate.
I can applaud this game for designing the puzzles around the hallucinations that people with schizophrenia commonly have, such as looking for patterns of the world around them. I just wish they had designed a few more, because once you've repeated this rune puzzle a dozen times, you will want to take the same drugs schizophrenics are prescribed. The combat in this game feels like it was tacked on so the game could avoid being labeled a walking simulator. Now it gets to be labeled a walking simulator with repetitive combat. The developers were so pleased with themselves over this scene of Senua dying, only to then reveal it was a hallucination, that they reused it a few more times in the game. This game informs you that you will lose all of your progress if you die too much. However, I died plenty of times in this playthrough without it happening, and no one has reported the game deleting their save file. This means either two things. Either you have to die way more times than most people ever would in the game, or this is an elaborate trick to make you feel as paranoid as Senua is. I don't know if I should add a sin for a stupid mechanic, or remove one for a clever mind game.
Goddess Hela lies behind the gate to Helheim. To open the gate, you must first face the gods that guard it.
Druth made Senua's journey a lot harder than it needed to be by telling her stories about the door to Helheim and the two gods she needs to defeat to open it. Druth was a real person and not one of Senua's hallucinations. There is nothing stopping Senua from opening this door and crossing the bridge to Helheim except for her belief in a story Druth told her. These portal puzzles are interesting the first couple times you do them while progressing through the forest. The novelty wears off around the dozenth time. You also have to wonder why the Northmen built these archways out in the middle of nowhere for no reason, since they certainly don't see illusionary walls through them. Oddly enough, the ledges painted with white paint are marked for climbing down rather than up.
Because once you gaze into the relentless darkness, all that lurks within it can see you too.
Well, that's one way to indirectly quote Nietzsche. It's not going to fool anyone, however. But good on you for trying, game. I know I already mentioned the fidget spinner thing, but if this game is going to push it into my face with puzzles, then this game is getting sinned again. Mind screw shot. Nearly every cutscene is just the camera circling a wide-eyed Senua as she looks around.
She wanted to marry Dillion. She thought her curse would affect him.
This game tries to get away with backstory narration with the use of the Furies talking in Senua's head, which means Senua is narrating her past to herself. This is easily the most unsettling cutscene in the game. Senua paralyzed by her own terror and hallucinating an unseen shadowy crow eating her alive. It's based on sleep paralysis, which is one of the most terrifying things a person can ever experience. This boss fight against Valraven comes close to getting a fuck this part in particular sin. Not because it's hard, but because it's annoying. The combat is so simplistic in this game that the only way to make it challenging is by making enemies damage sponges or throwing a lot of enemies at you in waves, both of which this game does. It can be hard to tell what is and isn't a figment of Senua's fractured mind, but one thing I can tell is real is the lack of Northmen. This is their sacred land where they bring their dead, and there isn't a single Northman to be found throughout the entire game as Senua wanders around it, and that would be the first giant talking head in this game, of which there are many. Ninja Theory has their own style. It makes no sense, but it's theirs.
When you see a fire gate of Surt, know that only a sacrifice will stoke the fires of Muspel.
Or you could tip over those fire pots and burn it that way. It's just a wicker gate. Once again, Druth made Senua's goal that much harder by telling her to light sacrificial fire so she could pass through the fire gates. You already pulled the Senua is dead trick. The rules clearly state you can only do that once per game.
There is no one here but me. Did you think that I would let you go?
Stephen Hartley sounds so much like Andy Serkis that I had to check IMDb just to make sure that this wasn't Andy Serkis, which makes me wonder why Ninja Theory just didn't hire Andy Serkis instead of someone who sounds just like him, since Ninja Theory has worked with Andy in the past.
In the head of his corpse lies the seat of his soul. So you must carry his vessel to bring him back home.
With the voices in your head really speaking rhymes, hallucinated Northman sucker punches Senua in the face rather than use the axe he was holding. Yeah, that guy only exists in Senua's mind, but put yourself in my shoes. How else am I supposed to sin a game where nearly everything that happens didn't actually happen? Strip away the hallucinations, and this game is just a woman walking across a bridge to leave her lover's head in a temple. Senua's hallucinations have perfect timing when it comes to changing the time of day and weather to fit the scene. Once again, this is an hallucination. What isn't an hallucination is Senua's sword breaking and her falling off the bridge. So am I to believe the hallucination destroyed the bridge, broke Senua's sword, and knocked her off? I look forward to the day when developers stop putting these sections in where you can only limp along for the first few minutes until you walk it off and can move at normal speeds again. I get that they really wanted to convey Senua's mental illness, but did they need to do it for the full length of the game? My own father suffered from schizophrenia and his episodes only lasted a few hours at best. Then he would be mostly lucid again for the next few days. For this plot to work the way it's written, Senua has to stay in one schizophrenic episode after another for long periods of time without any moments of lucidity, where she might realize that all this is just in her head and that she doesn't have to do any of this.
You should become a warrior, you know.
Yeah, you should totally become a warrior. Girl I've only just met and is mentally ill and shunned by the rest of the village. Giving you a weapon will surely get the villagers to stop hating you. The classical era was really progressive on its stance on women in combat. Would it have killed them to use a different camera technique besides circle pans around Senua? I know they came up with a cool way of using a real-world camera during motion capture to capture the actor from the same angle in-game, but repeating this shot only makes it obvious that they were in a studio and can only walk in circles around the room. More circle pans. Even more circle pans.
I need this sword. It's important. Can you help me?
The sword appears whole, but it is an illusion. It shattered into shards long ago. It is said a great warrior can reforge grammar.
How exactly are Druth's stories lining up so well with the actual location? I mean, there being a sword stuck in a tree at this location and giant sword shards sticking out of the ground that had to be approached to unlock the sword is pretty random. And why did he make all this stuff up? He wanted to help Senua for being there for him in his final days.
A great warrior can reforge grammar by answering the trials of Odin, one for each shard.
Get ready for an hour and a half of repeated puzzles as you do all of Odin's trials to get the sword that is only moderately more powerful than Senua's old sword.
You're going nowhere. You will not defy the gods. You cannot escape the darkness. Your curse will make everyone suffer.
Well, Senua was exiling herself from the village, taking her curse with her. So how would her curse affect the village at that point? Would you be free of that worry? There's a limit to what a person can believably hallucinate. Senua coming out with a different hallucinated world and test for each of these trials is pushing it. Game tries to hide loading times with a full motion scene of Dillian, yet there is a clear pause in the video during the transition. Dillian had some pretty 21st century facial grooming going on for a person from Roman Britain, stumbling blindly through the darkness for 20 goddamn minutes. I guess it made creating the level easier, but damn if this wasn't boring.
There's a well.
Don't turn back. You're getting close.
Sure, jump down the well. Great advice to your lover, Dillian. Stop it with the circle pans. Use a wide-angle shot for God's sakes. So this sword has to be real and not an hallucination. So is this a real magical sword or is this just incredibly convenient? Sword that is said to slay gods takes many hits to kill what is essentially cannon fodder. This game has taken far too many liberties already with hallucinations, but this one goes one step too far with Senua finding herself inside a Doom level. This game makes up for the hour-long puzzle sequence by having you slog through what feels like an endless stream of enemies in hell. I have to admit, the visual design of hell is legitimately unsettling.
Do you hear the suffering, Senua? Does your precious gift of sight let you see the souls that rot here in this sea of corpses?
Just imagine if I sounded like this in all of my videos.
The beast is stalking you from the shadows. Your sword is useless here.
Senua went through 2 other sections where she was in total darkness and couldn't see, and in neither did she panic like this and imagine something was chasing her. If you're wondering why the sins for this game are pretty sparse, it's because I can't work miracles. How am I supposed to sin a game where every conversation is the main character talking to herself? This bridge had to be held together with tree sap to break apart as soon as Senua stepped on it. You already used the grasping hands in the wall bit in hell, and it doesn't even look as good here. You can actually see the arms clipping through the wall. And here's another damaged sponge boss fight. And since this is a warthog you fight with a magic sword, let's give it a bonus sin for the Legend of Zelda reference.
The final battle. Get his soul back. It's the final task.
Yes, it is.
If only all games built out the climax by breaking the 4th wall to tell you. Not content with making you slog through a wave of enemies in hell, then make you do it all over again on this fight on the bridge. This game started out as a pretty damn good realization of the kinds of hallucinations, voices, and other issues that schizophrenics deal with. So of course they threw out all that subtlety for the finale so Senua could imagine herself walking through mirrors, fighting giant gods, monsters, and many other things that would be damn hard for even a very mentally disturbed person to hallucinate all at once.
The gods have saved your mother. Through my hand.
Zimbel would have had to have known that Senua's mother suffered from mental illness when he married her, and he considered that illness to be a curse. Why would he marry her in the first place? Just to burn her later to stop what he thought was a dangerous curse. And if Zimbel believed that death was the only way to end the curse, why did he keep Senua locked away instead of killing her too?
This is the will of the gods.
Fuck the gods!
Not that I'm against a character dropping an F-bomb, but when they say it only once in the entire game and at the very end, you just know the devs were holding their fire for this exact moment. Game wastes an honestly stunning piece of visual design on a finale that's just a swarm of enemies that you can't defeat.
And if you really are Hela, then I have a sword here that can kill a god!
Well, your previous sword killed 2 gods, but I can see why this one makes you feel more confident. Repeated, boss fights, boss fights. If you were going to use full motion video in your game, at least hide the modern tattoos on the actor's wrist. Maybe you could have fooled me into believing Senua was actually dead if you hadn't tried to pull this trick twice already.
Follow us. We have another story to tell.
Fourth wall sequel baiting is worth double.